Here we go. Sorry. Hold on. That's it.
The tone of the game was set pretty early on, that we knew that we wanted to make a really grounded story. We knew that we wanted to make the player feel the sense of tension and dread and go through the same emotional roller coaster that Joel and Ellie were going through.
One of the things we kind of struggled with is to say, well, if we want to really ground this world and make it so like realistic, maybe we shouldn't have anything that could be perceived as a monster. Maybe like by just having an infection that just killed people, and it's all about humans and how they deal with this post-apocalyptic society and how different people decide to survive. Maybe that would be enough. And what we realize is, because we're making an action game, a lot of the storytelling happens on the joystick. And once we remove the infected, it's like all of a sudden now we can't tell the story through gameplay of what happened to the world. And that's where we kind of went back and kind of brought the infected back in, because it lets you see, once you're fighting them, the threat that people had to deal with, that otherwise would just be very cerebral and people could talk about it, but you couldn't necessarily experience it yourself. In a novel that might work, in a game for us, in a specifically an action game, it didn't work.
And from there, when we start kicking around those ideas, and we're just like, what would be cool just to play?
The early inception for it really came from a BBC video we saw called Planet Earth, where they were talking about a cordyceps fungus.
This cordyceps fungus gets inside of the brain and controls these ants, and mandibles start chomping, they grow up to higher areas, cordyceps fungus sprouts out, and then it germinates.
And essentially uses them to spread its infection and take over whole colonies, sometimes wiping them out. As soon as we saw it, we were intrigued by the idea of, what if it jumped to humans? So what would happen? How would people react? What would happen to society? As we're trying to develop the look of the infected, we went through so many different iterations, some that looked really alien and subhuman, some that looked just essentially like zombies, and we couldn't find like an original place for them. But one of our artists just did this kind of photo mashup where he took a bunch of images of diseases or images of fungal overgrowth, and he kind of mashed it all together and he threw it on this person.
It was a very iterative process, making sure that the fungus felt properly integrated, like it was part of the body, growing out of the body.
And not just fungus growing in the head, but it's tearing the face apart, cleft down the middle, this gaping maw of a mouth with the crooked teeth.
And it's in great agony as its humanity and its brain is still somewhat functioning. Maybe you still have some human cognitive abilities or thought process back here.
This isn't some decaying corpse on the ground. This is a living thing that's going to be coming after you in the world.
The fungus is always the focal point. So you can see from a distance, oh, this guy's infected. I can tell straight away.
In fungus, they have these beautiful saturated colors, and we really like that contrast of this something so horrific that it's going to like stop at nothing, its relentless force of death, and yet elements of it are beautiful. It's not just about gore. It's not just about everything about it being scary, because to us it's actually scarier when things on it are somewhat benign or somewhat beautiful.
It was evident that we were onto something that was quite a bit different, and something that we hadn't really seen before, which was eerily human but very disturbing.
And it seemed so creepy and so unique that right away we gravitated towards it, and it's like, this is our base infected, everything should kind of come out of this look. So once we had this idea of the face-splitting kind of look that eventually became what we called the clicker stage,
we went to great lengths to create a full biological cycle for these things.
So in the early stages, you don't actually see too many signs of the fungus surfacing out of the skin. It's kind of underneath it, like people have lumps starting to show. The eyes will be kind of cloudy or lopsided, because the fungus kind of originates inside the head.
That moves into the next phase, which is the clicking phase.
And if they mess with the eyes, we end up saying, well, how do they get around? Oh, echolocation.
And they use a form of echolocation to track down their enemies.
just like bats, or even some blind people can see by making a clicking sound, a sound that on its own wouldn't be very scary. And then to associate it with something that people in this world are very fearful of, so that as you're exploring an environment, all of a sudden you hear this click and you're seeing everybody just get frightened, just everybody duck, everybody hushes.
Great.
The bloater is the most severe of the stages. So large pieces of the body has been replaced by these kind of fungal plates.
The fungus completely takes over the body and blooms.
They're kind of covered in things that have been growing on them. Things like moss and like little life on life kind of.
What the fuck is that?
When the infected feels like it's going to die, it finds like a dark corner and it becomes part of the environment.
The human elements aren't there anymore.
And then the body is gone.
They lay down and sprout and then spew spores.
And if people can breathe those spores, they become infected as well. It all had to kind of make sense of how each stage flowed from one to the other. And that's hopefully how we've created a world that you can kind of look through it and understand the science behind it and say, I could buy this, I could get into this.
Mandatory evacuation. Evacuate to where?
What do you think? Quarantine zone. See, some places got a heads up before the infection showed up. Most didn't.
Over the course of Joel and Ellie's journey through this game across America,
You find all these different societies, all these different enclaves, and you get to see how do they deal with the infected.
without the manifestation of this infection, you can't have these people making those interesting choices.
The world we decided was actually its own character, really grounded with a lot of texture. What happens, after 20 years of the fall of man, when no one's taking care of anything?
This book called The World Without Us describes in detail how much fighting on a day-to-day basis we have to do to keep nature back. And once you stop doing that, how quickly nature can reclaim that. As they talk about New York, and how every day they pump water out of the subway system. That system breaks down within 2 days, a whole city is flooded. And once water gets introduced, then structures collapse pretty quickly. Trees will sprout, and wind will carry those seeds over, and gutters get clogged, and then when it rains, water fills up, and then pretty soon you have vegetation growing over there, and once you have vegetation, concrete breaks pretty easily for when there's a tree and roots breaking through that. Even some of the stuff we did on Uncharted, exploration of how temples were ruined, what if you took those ideas and put them in Pittsburgh or Boston?
And obviously right when that happened, you can imagine that being pretty terrible to look at. But you think about 20 years later, and with rainwater filling up those sinkholes and then those becoming like little marshes with lily pads in them.
We had this wonderful piece of concept art we developed really early on, and there are all of these wild animals that have escaped from a zoo and over the past 20 years have bred, and now they have herds roaming these cities. And that's something that tells you that life goes on and this world is worth saving.
Don't scare it.
I won't.
What are you doing?
There's something really pretty about nature reclaiming its domain once we are gone.
So fucking cool.
We have another level of OCD of the logic goes into some of these environments. Water damage seeps in, and then that creates some little moss growing on the floor, or a tree radiates energy from its base, and that over time starts to melt the snow around it. And that's the reason why you'd see those like rings of leaves showing through in the snow. That gives it that extra, believability. This is pitch art. I'll try to start with an idea that conveys sort of the feel of the environment. Something like this, very brushstrokey, very painterly. You can see not a lot of detail, just energy and conveying a mood. This is sort of just a conversation starter, and then this would be more of an actual space. So you start talking about, is this too tight of a space right here? Would the player even fit through there? Do we even want to include water? Those are conversations you start having a little bit later. And then it usually needs several more passes back and forth in order to be tightened up to be the experience that you would see in the final product. So, dude, I was actually trying to figure out right here, there should probably be some dead foliage.
It might be cool to see some of the dead stuff around the edges of the green, or like even spilling out into the street.
Maybe what we do is, in some of these areas, we use it as like a transition from the actual concrete to the side of the building, so like they're almost sitting on top of a bed of dead foliage, like that really rich kind of like orangey brown color.
Sienna or something would be nice. Something real cheddary.
That's how you know you're done. The end product often ends up being stronger because that bouncing back off somebody else gives you a result that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of in the first place.
All right, here's the bridge. That's our way out of here.
As far as concept art goes, definitely the ultimate goal is just helping everybody as much as possible.
Me and the background artist will work together. I'll often just go to them because they've got like a really, really good like visual imagination. At some point, you came in almost like flat on. So that's kind of good because the bus station is right in your peripheral view, and you're probably going to enter the bus station. You're probably not going to get lost. But it doesn't at all utilize this cool architecture here, like the bus station sign. Like that's a really distinctive silhouette, and it's a really interesting sort of architectural detail. So we changed the entrance.
Look at that. Another city, another abandoned quarantine zone.
I think it's a better composition anyway. It's not so like symmetrical. And I think that was done so that this sign read better. If you didn't see the word bus on it, you might not know it's a bus station. So I think that helps.
Everything we're doing in the environments is relating back to what you should be feeling in the story or what's happening to these characters.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.
It's the director's chair.
Working on the project, we knew we wanted to have a pretty minimalist soundtrack. And we had a folder where we just throw music in there. Looked at the folder one day and we saw, we have a lot of stuff here from Gustavo Santaolalla. We're looking for a composer. What if we reached out to him?
Oh no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen, baby, I know this one. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby.
My life has been and still is kind of like a road movie. I grew up in Argentina. I came to the United States in 1978 because we had a horrible political situation in Argentina. We had a military dictatorship where 30,000 people disappeared at the hands of the government, and many other more were tortured, and I was blacklisted. It was just impossible for me to keep on living there. I've been in jailed many times since I was probably 15 years old, just because I had long hair and I play an electric guitar. So I had to embark on this trip. I can relate to that kind of need of movement and going to the next place and the next place and the next step. I'm always attracted to the possibility of getting involved with a project from the very beginning. I like to work from the script and talking to the director.
It's never been, oh, give me a piece like this, or give me a music that's this. It's just been very high level. Here's what the story's about. Here are the themes. Go write some stuff.
Since I don't know how to really read or write music, the way I produce music is actually recording it. So I like to come early in the projects, and I did in The Last of Us. One thing that was fantastic from the very, very beginning was the freedom I had to try and to do whatever I felt could work, you know.
As the story was still being written, you could listen to this piece of music and just get a sense of where this needs to go tonally, because the music was still inspiring the story. So that was the great thing of having the music written so far in advance.
And at the beginning, I mean, I was going really out with some things, and sometimes some of those things were the ones that they liked the most, you know. So I really felt very motivated to work, and I enjoyed immensely working.
It was this very organic back and forth experience where one element was inspiring the other and vice versa.
I needed to go into some more dark places, more textural and not necessarily melodic. I'm always trying to sort of push myself into playing instruments that I don't know how to play. There's an element of danger and innocence. Lennon once said, you know, give me a tuba and I will be able to do I'm an artist. I should be able to do something. I like to put myself in that situation. So these are just PVC pipes, the one you use, you know, in construction. Or instruments that I know, kind of twist them. From the concept of the prepared piano, you know, I mean, I've worked with prepared guitar to stick things into the guitar and things like that. And also in The Last of Us in particular, I work with a detuned guitar. So I really tune the guitar extremely low. And the result is, you know, strings that are very loose and will produce not only sound, but produce noise. Because I believe, you know, every environment has its own sound. We have in our, you know, small studio, we have actually the possibility to record almost anywhere, including the bathroom, and we have done some fabulous recording, especially in the kitchen. When you score to picture, which is something that I don't do, then you know what you're going to expect. But when you provide people with music, like I've done in all the films that I've done, and then you see it, how the director decided to use that, you know, in what particular way he uses or where they edit it. It's always fascinating to me. I watch a scene and I'm going, you know, it's fantastic how they use this piece. I would have never, of all the music that I've done, probably I would have never used this piece there, but it works, you know, great. So I like that feeling of a collaboration. I think, you know, the guys also that work in programming and adapting that music to the game, they should share a lot of the credit for the end result.
In the beginning, there was silence. Yes. And then they hired sound designers. Then they regretted that decision.
Hold it steady. Ha! Got you!
In a much quieter environment like that, we really had to fill out the soundscape with much more natural sounds, much more detailed, delicate sounds. The tension comes from the lack of sound, in a way.
Your brain is thrown off because where I expect to hear buses and crowds, all of a sudden I hear wind and leaves rustling. Again, it's creepy and beautiful at the same time because it's almost like I'm going on a hike, but I'm in a downtown area.
Get up over this truck. Let's see what we can find.
So Neil, I mean, we were going through the iterations, so he just did not want, like, yells and screeches and what he called, like, you know, kind of witchy qualities, right. The cackling witch. He didn't want anything like that. It was a little bit of a head scratcher to figure out, okay, how do we make it sound human but not human? Yeah. We really did not want to use any animals. We wanted these all to be human. Derek and I basically decided to hire a couple of voice actors who did some interesting work vocally to come see if they can come up with something. And we worked with this girl, Misty Lee.
She started giving us these really great screeches.
And that's no process.
Yeah, that's just her voice. And it started going into this little click. We also used a little bit of Phil's voice. We'd combine that also with an occasional Derek. That's just me, you know, moving my tongue. And what that kind of did was it sort of grounded it all, like maybe in the mouth area, the wetness, all that kind of stuff. And it adds a nice texture, actually. This is a composite of all the bits I just told you about.
Sounds like a Snapple bottle.
Oh, the lid?
Like the lid, yeah.
That's a good idea. Fuck, where were you guys like months ago? Why did we think of that? Why did we think of that? Viewers at home, you're probably wondering what this is. Let me tell you. About 10 years ago, I saw this Synthie A suitcase synth. I wanted to get one. This finally arrived in January, just in time to start using. I thought, well, what can I do with this? In Lakeside, there's a whiteout that happens, and this thing has a noise generator, which gives really convincing wind sound. The military still has technology. There's sirens and alarms, so I wanted to try some new concepts.
Man.
What?
Nothing, it's just... I've never seen anything like this, that's all.
You mean the woods?
Yeah. Never walked through the woods. It's kind of cool.
We consciously take in consideration lighting in the beginning.
Most of the game, we don't really have any real man-made light sources, so everything is naturally lit.
In the past, we could use a lot of artificial light, but in a world that has no electricity.
We have to hide most of the time, and that requires getting very close to certain assets.
Just stay back.
Otherwise, you can't.
Detail's expensive, and if you build up too much of it, you end up running into technical problems, right? Your engine slows down.
When the frame rate goes down, everyone can bring up the profiling tools and see which parts of the frame actually cause the drop of the frame rate.
This is the profiling tool. These are all the SPUs. Here's the GPU, and then here's the PPU. You can see here's the main process and here's all the sub-processes, and you can see, tells you how many milliseconds and cycles it's taking. The programmers are whiz at modifying this stuff and realizing, oh my god, why is this thing so big? We're taking 10 milliseconds on this thing. And then that's when they come over and find somebody and hit them over the head with a club and be like, why are you doing this? I love, we put the 30 frames per second goal because that's what we shoot for. Someone nicely put the 60 frames per second goal. It's like, yeah, we're not going to hit that.
Lighters usually can come up with different lighting setup that still looks great, but is less costly in terms of performance.
Did you talk to the character artist about her hand? So her face is getting a lot of spec, but then her arm is just like bone dry.
You think something we can tweak in shader? We'll have to send back to character team Michael to take a look.
I can play with the lights and see if that's creates more like spec.
Yeah. I've never ever focused so much on lighting and how much sensitivity there is to that here.
One of the first lighting scenarios I had to do was 7 a.m. overcast, and I'd wake up early and take photos with my phone. What color are the shadows? What color is the light?
It is a master's course unto itself of how to deal with ambient lighting because I've never had to use it so much.
Man, this is kind of sad.
What is?
All this music that's just sitting here. No one's around to listen to it. I don't know. It doesn't seem right.
All the characters cast soft shadows onto the environment. Even when there is no direct sunlight or no direct light sources, we still have nice fuzzy shadows.
When you're walking down a hallway and you see your soft shadow goes along with you projecting on the wall on the environment, that make everything look real.
Follow me through here.
Okay.
The flashlight brought a whole new spin on it. So some of the environments end up being really, really dark, and you need the flashlight to get around.
Give me a hand.
We want to have the environment be really dark, but also at the same time have colorful surfaces that are sort of hidden, so when a flashlight hits one of those, it bounces off onto the ceiling.
If you shine a light on a red wall, it will bounce the red lighting of the whole environment.
And it's very difficult to do, very expensive, but we did it. Everything should have a bounce lighting. Otherwise, the world is gonna feel dry and unrealistic.
I guess this is where the assholes sleep. I mean, slept.
This engine is really driven in a way towards a very high level of cinematic control over each frame. And hopefully, if we achieve our goal, you'll see it is beautiful. There are these truly beautiful moments amid all this chaos and destruction.
Yeah, once we're done with this whole thing, I'm gonna teach you how to play guitar. What do you say, huh?
Crunching is part of making games. I feel it's human nature, right? If I'm gonna have a guest at home that's gonna come for a couple of weeks, I'm probably gonna clean their room just the day before they arrive, right? And I think it's the same thing. It's just like everything comes together at the end.
I personally enjoy Crunch. I think you get this like absolute laser focus because it has to come together.
There's a camaraderie that also comes
There's a
together.
camaraderie, totally, yeah.
The vibe is everywhere, you know what I mean? Everyone's kind of like giving it 150% at this point.
We're getting there, right? You start to get these glimmers, and I don't think anyone who doesn't make games realizes how late in the process you get those glimmers.
1 week before we shipped that press demo, we're all like, this kind of sucks. What's going on here? It's like, we need to dig down and find this. And in 1 week, the fun came together.
Like you're shooting at a guy and then somebody flanks you and you hit him and you avoid the other guy who's shooting you and then you flank and go behind cover and you're like, oh, that 5 seconds in that 15-hour game was really, really fun. How do we make that 5 seconds happen thousands more times?
My favorite video game is making video games. It is as challenging and as complex and as interesting.
If we had to like try all the things that didn't work, what's hard about Crunch? It's like marching through that swamp of it not working.
I mean, nothing's ever really final because you can always make something better. Always. So we're constantly changing and constantly reiterating and trying to make it better and better and better pretty much until we ship.
As an artist, you're never really happy with your work. You could be given like 100 years to work on something, you'll still find things to nitpick and things to fix.
Yeah, you can work on the game for 10 years and you'll still be crunching at the end. So it's like, okay.
All of a sudden, it's like getting ready one morning in the shower, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm about to ship another title, and this is going to be a really good title, and it gets you excited, and you're like, all right!
Do I think the game's gonna be good? Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I think it was good a little while ago, and now we're gonna make it
extra
kind of
good.
amazing. Yeah. What it will take to get there in these next 5 weeks is gonna be a lot. I'm excited. I have faith.
Every time we're shipping a game, it's terrifying. You just hope for the best.
You don't know, right? I mean, people have different opinions. We have to go with our guts, but I trust the team just to pull it off.